Hi, good afternoon and welcome. So as you can see, my name's Tony Beeston. And in this session, what we're going to be talking about is actually what's the impact of our financial close in our business, and can we change it? And this is one of the opportunities that IT has that is fairly rare. It's the opportunity to actually go back to the finance department, to go to the CFO and turn around and say, hey, you've got problems that I can actually fix, but you can actually give him metrics about what his problem is and get them excited about it. This is based on customer testimonial. So the normal informational purposes about what's going on. I'm actually using a great deal of external information from APQC benchmarking and Ventana research, who specialize in the Office of Finance. And I'm using an existing customer of CA Atomic Workload Automation as an example of what can be achieved. The first aspect I'm going to talk about is actually, is there a problem to fix? Quite often in IT, we turn around and say, hey, we've got technology, it can do something, that's great. But does it need to be fixed? And more importantly, will the bill payer want it to be fixed? So we'll talk about that first. And then we'll actually talk about the close itself. So the first part is your close any good or not? Without comparison, you can't tell. All you know is we close every month, and then we move on. So we'll use independent research to actually see how other people close and what the impact is to their businesses about what's going on. And then I'm going to be talking about a customer's journey to improvement, how they applied that, how they saw it, and what happened with it. So first of all, the bill payer. We're talking about financial close. Our CFO is going to be the person that's interested in this. It's going to be the person who's going to be paying the bill. Now, firstly, Ventana Research, who undertook a study with the CFOs, they actually worked out that 4/5 of executives rated reducing the times to close as either important or very important to their business. And we'll cover why in a couple of slides. But IBM did a survey with CFOs to turn around and say, what are you doing? What's important to you and how well do you think you're doing? Within the survey that you can actually reach, there was a lot more categories, but I've taken out a few of the categories that were important to them. Now, interestingly, this shows them saying how important it is on the light blue line and how well they think they're doing. So managing enterprise risk sits very high. Yeah, it's a very important thing to do. But within finance, when we're talking about the financial close cycle, this is a historic event. We are looking at the last period and we are closing out and doing the things. But we still need to run the business. So if we've got 75% of our accounts teams trying to work on close, we can't be running the business as well. We've got a higher risk profile there. Process improvement is ubiquitous and constant within finance. They're constantly looking at trying to find ways to improve. Actually, automation has a lot to play on there. I'll touch on a couple of subjects within there. But again, very important, but not being felt as if we're doing fantastically well. And obviously measuring how well my business is doing, this historic event, and being able to project and go forward. If we move back into Ventana's research, and again, you can get to the white paper that's online. It's also carried, there's a copy of it carried on our website if you wanted to get to there. But around financial transformation, when they sampled all of these companies, and they're all very similar, billion, multi-billion size companies, similar structures of what's going on. But there was a vast difference in how long it took to close the books. So we can see 40% of companies closed within 5 to 6 days. And they set 5 days as like the gold standard. This is what you should be aiming for in a modern business to be running effectively and efficiently. But there's still the rest of people taking longer to do that. And certainly I speak to financial organizations and CFOs frequently, and there is dramatically more interest the longer that close cycle. Now, having a 12-day close is not necessarily something I must fix. But I immediately ask the question, is that causing you or the business an issue or a challenge? So the first thing to take away from this presentation is the question of, how long does it take us to close? If they say 5 days or less, shake their hand and say, I've been to a conference and you're in the top 20% of organizations, well done, you're doing good. It's important for them to know. If it takes longer than that, the next question immediately then comes in to say, do you actually want to impact that? automation being applied to it without changing the accounting process can actually affect that and make it better. So why is that close cycle important? It's the concept of timely information. Now, this is a phrase that's actually used from the CFOs. We've spent an awful lot of money on analytics tools and all the rest of it. I've already mentioned that the actual close activity is past, it's history. It's a process we go through to catch up to make sure we're okay. You know, we have the quarterly and the annuals that we have other things we need to do, but the monthly is the past. But actually the business needs to fire all those analytics into it to make the decisions about where the business should go. If I'm 12 days into the month before I've got the data, it's a bit late. Yeah? So this concept of timely information is important. And again, the analysis shows, you know, the shorter the close, bit obvious, the shorter the close, the more feeling they had timely information about what's going on. And there is this direct correlation between the close and timely information. Any improvement we can make gives time to do forward-looking analysis of the past. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit later into what might it cost us to close, and there's obviously a change in what's going in there. And when we talk about that, yes, if we're able to automate more of the activity, the actual cost of close is going to be lower. That's great, it will fund the project we need to do. That's actually not the big important thing. The big important thing is we're running our business way more efficiently. Yeah, much better, we're much closer to the pulse. So we talk about automation. It's probably the most overused word that's been around for a while because automation means different things to different people in different places. So, okay, it's not just scheduling or workload automation as it's now called, okay? It's not workforce automation, this thing where we can group a group of people together to say you do task A, say when it's done, and I'll pass a message on to the next person to do the next thing. It's not a thing called robotic process automation, which typically is the ability to create a bot to heavy lift HR activity in isolation. It's not just that, yeah? And it's also not that old thing called business process automation, which we try not to talk about anymore because it was missold. It's still a valuable asset, but it's not just that. It's actually all of that and some other bits and pieces. It's a grouping together of what's going on. The really important thing is I need to be able to check your business rules. So you need to be able to define your business rules of what's going on. If we're in accounts payable, when do we sweep and when do we not sweep? $1 million worth of transactions, we can sweep. Any more than that, Pete needs to turn around and say, what are we going to do? Yeah? So these are the accounting rules that they actually go through. We need to have a central decision engine because we're actually talking to lots of different things. It comes from lots of different places. We're talking to humans, we're talking to computer systems, we're needing to check things that's going on. Critically with this close is going to take multiple days. We need active service level management on every single component that's going on. We need to be ahead of the curve. If I happen to have a task that needs to go to a human being and I pass that task to you, I have to manage that task when it's with you. I need to learn how long you normally take. And I need to start prompting you if you're taking longer because otherwise we're going to affect the whole. And that's not a job that's running, that's somebody who's using their accounting degree to do a job that they actually need to do. Yeah? We need to be able to model every activity that goes on. So that is, yes, there's some jobs, there's some interfaces, there's things that are going on, all of our reconciliations that we need to do where we're doing the sanity checks of what's going on in different places, talking to people, asking them to do, escalation to people to be able to move things along. So it's everything that's going on. But again, if we go back to Ventana, the more they've automated, the shorter their close. With Ventana research, we have to be careful with the word automation because using some clever macros in a spreadsheet, as far as Ventana was concerned, was automation, okay? But there is still a statistical difference in getting there. Yep. So, sounds complicated, and invariably when I'm talking to people, they go, oh, we can't undertake that project. That's going to take forever. Actually, it's not true. So again, go to Ventana. If we actually look at the reconciliation within accounting, so this is checking that either this subledger and what's been sent to GL, or this feeder system into subledgers, that they balance. So if I've got a feeder system that's sending in invoices and it sent me 264 million, I've got 264 million accepted in my subledger, and GL is reporting the same figure. Yeah? Now, we're all meant to reconcile all the time. And it's always a dangerous question to ask, because most organizations will say, oh yeah, we do it weekly. Or, yeah, we do it monthly. Yeah? The problem with not doing it that frequently is any problem that occurs builds up, even weekly. If a problem appears on the Monday, by Friday, I've now got potentially tens of thousands of transactional issues to deal with, whereas if I knew about it on Monday, potentially I could have resolved that invalid account code combination and I don't get more of them. So I can actually get smarter about working on. So the very first step of anybody down this automation zone, I tend to turn around and say, look at reconciliation first. There's lots of them. Bank account reconciliations. Yeah? It's a very heavy manual task that we have to do. You don't need a degree to do this, because this is fairly simple, basic checking of what's going on. Lift that away from those users and allow them to use their degree for what's going on. If I move on to APQC benchmarking, because yeah, I'm old and we are talking statistics, and I still remember the phrase of there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So I always look to corroborate something I've seen. APQC benchmarking out in the US have actually undertaken a similar study. They went into a lot more detail about what's going on. But it correlates. They have top performers, the top 25%, closing out in about 4 days. Okay? Then we got our medium and we got our bottom performer, taking a different amount of time. The depth of information they went into, that actually they broke out the management reporting, because we've been talking about close. Well, what do we mean? Just changing the accounting status? Yeah, that's one thing, that's one part of it. But once we've done that, we actually have to go through consolidation. Having event-based processing and being able to pick it up and move it forward directly means we can consolidate overnight and be ready. So interesting what was going on. But what was more interesting was they was able to cost. How much does it cost to close $1,000 worth of revenue? Okay, so those top performers, the ones that had more timely information, their total cost of closure was 11 cents per $1,000 of revenue. The middle set, 23, just over double. Not horrendous. The bottom ones, 64, significantly more. They're taking longer to close. There's obviously more problems and resolutions, probably a lot more adjusting going on and needing to double check everything that's going on. But that's quite a big difference, but you know, even I can work out cents. I come from the UK, but you know, cents. So I've done some math. I've taken small companies. So I've got $250 million revenue, $500 million revenue, and $750 million revenue company. The differential in cost between being a bottom performer and a top performer, even for a $250 million company, is $1.33 million extra spend per year. Now, if anybody tells you, oh, if you're in the bottom, the worst, and I can make you the best in one go, they're lying. That isn't going to happen. We all know that. But even if you only move from the middle to being in the top 25%, and you traded $500 million, you're going to save $500,000 a year. And this math actually scrolls out. Now, Ventana didn't do pricing. They did. The lies, damn lies, and statistics. I had to go back a little bit further, but you can still get online to the same article. So the Hackett group actually went through the same types of studies. Their numbers correlate. They talk about saving $5.5 million per billion of revenue. So you trade 10 billion, you could be talking about 55 million saving. All depends on the revenue and what's going on. Bottom to top, yeah? So you can actually use the maths to work out where you are now. Hopefully you know what your cost of close is. That's not always a common thing that's been gone through in most organizations, but you can start to assume where you are as to what's happening, and then if you can start to see what's happening. So this is the reason why potentially you should do it. So the bit here that I would say is first, go back, ask finance, how long does it take us to close? If it's less than 5, shake their hand, say well done. It's good to give the positive affirmation. If it's longer than that, what's the impact to our business? Would you like to shorten it? Yeah. If you ask any CFO, would you want to shorten it? They say yes. So you have to follow it up with the question, why? Okay? Just doing it quicker isn't a valid reason. You need to know what the business problem behind it, and invariably the answer that comes out is I need to use the analytics to be able to work out what last month meant for our business within week 1, yeah, by week 2, so I can stop manufacturing those 27,000 widgets if it ain't going to work, yeah, so I can adjust my business accordingly. The next bit I'm going to talk about is actually a company's journey through improvement. Now, I was lucky enough to be a consultant on this account. So I've actually lived their life. I've actually seen before they automated what they did. So it's quite interesting. Now, the customer is the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. So they're Europe's largest employer, and it's our state-funded health service for those that you aren't aware of it. So if I need to go to a hospital, I go to the NHS hospital. If I break my arm, they treat me free of charge and send me away. They created what they called a shared business service, because the NHS is actually broken up to 630 trusts across the UK, and each one runs as a separate entity. They each have their own finance department. Okay? They also each have their own CEO, which maybe is a bit of waste of public money, but we won't go there. So when they created this shared business service, what they actually inherited was they inherited part of what the NHS had been trying to do before. So they had 2 data centres. Those places, West Yorkshire and the South West, they are regions within the United Kingdom. So Yorkshire's up here, South West is down here, and that's a very small country, okay? A number of trusts, so a number of sets of books in each one of them, as we say, and they inherited this, and this is what we're going to manage. Their intention was to bring it into a single instance of a finance system with all the sets of books coming across. And what they did to start with was very sensible. They went out to the finance department, they said, what do you do at close? Took all the actions, wrote detailed notes of everything they did, yeah, all the decisions they were making, you know, what made you say yes or no, okay? Now, most finance departments I go into already have this. Yeah, when you ask IT, is there documentation? They go, no. You go into finance and turn around and say, I need to see some documentation on close. And they go, there you go. Yeah, they've done it because they have to do this every month. People go off sick, you still have to close. You can't not close. They've documented it, okay? Sometimes you need to augment it with, what are you really doing to check? Oh, I open this report, this report, this report, get a desk calculator and go A plus B minus C. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, sometimes you need to do that. So they went through all those notes. They then get some operational volunteers, and the quotes are intentional here. Yeah, you, and you, in the room, we're going to do close. So it wasn't really volunteering, but they called them volunteers. They were put into a training room in late afternoon when they're going to close, and effectively they were conducted by somebody at the front following the notes. So it truly was, you could have given the guy a baton. I actually sat in the room whilst they did it, and it would be, you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this. Yeah, and they went through the close process itself. So it was the ultimate human workflow management tool. Yeah, no IT involved, there was the orchestra at the front, okay? Now, when they said that they started in the afternoon, it was true. When they finished, pizza companies had stopped delivering pizza, okay? So 15 volunteers, they managed to close 27 sets of books. As I said, they'd start, finish when no more pizza delivery. Anybody that's in a series with multi-org, multiple sets of books, that's impressive, yeah, to be able to go through that. Remember, the National Health Service is a government department. If I owe them money, even at the end of the year, never mind, pay us next year. Yeah, okay. There's different things in commercial side, but it's quite improved about what's going on. However, consistency was still an issue. It's done once a month. That's not enough time to build muscle memory about the things that we do. Yeah. So unless you've got exactly the same person doing the same thing, it became quite different. Running that same thing, humans are the worst robots in the world. Yeah. Do this 26 times. Yeah, I'm going to find another way of doing it on the 27th because I'm bored. Okay. So it was a bit of a challenge. If you go back to the first slide, though, they currently had 132 orgs in those systems. Now, would it be an army? No, it'd probably be a brigade of people. They certainly didn't have a training room big enough to be able to do that. It doesn't scale with people in that particular instance. And these were volunteers. It was you're volunteering for something you don't like doing. Unless you pay them an awful lot of money, they're not going to keep doing it. Okay? But the business model was to look after half of the NHS. So that was 300 sets of books to close. We are at an army now, okay? That's official. And remember, if they troll it out over the whole organization, it's 650 some odd trusts. So they needed to look at options. Now, I did sit in the room and watch them do it. It was impressive. So they made a decision. What do we do? How do we get out of here? The first one was, let's customize our finance system. Let's look at doing that. Let's make it work a bit smarter. This is a shared business service. We were back in the day when customizing was good. Yeah, it's not now. We already realized why, because we can't upgrade. They had to guarantee they could upgrade. So, okay. But the biggest thing about it was nobody had done this before. There was no guarantee it would work. So I could spend millions on this, and I wasn't sure. So they actually discarded that one relatively early in the cycle about what's going on. The other classic that comes up, let's get an organization to come in and re-engineer our accounting process. Let's streamline it from an actual accounting process, what's going on, from procure to pay all the way through. Let's make it fast, what's going on. Each of the trusts is a separate finance department. They're each a customer. Trying to get them all to agree to exactly the same thing would have taken longer than they had the contract for, okay? And certainly rolling it out would take that long. But the biggest bugbear was the close wasn't broken. We close every month. I just want to do it better. I want to do it faster, yeah? I don't want to spend millions trying to sort this out. I just want this to work better. So that's where automation started to be looked at. There were certain key requirements that were needed because they've been doing these things manually about what's going on. The biggest thing is being able to determine business outcome. Now let's go back to workload automation. If we run a job, the job says, did I work or did I not work? And most people in IT say, if it works, great, it's not my problem. Actually, it's immaterial. Did we get the business outcome we expected? So if I run an import of transactions into a subledger and there are some warnings, that is a failure. And the finance team need to know. They don't need to be told to go and look. They need to be told these have come in. So outcome checking is critical to what we actually need to do, what's going on. And that means you need to be able to get it from a vast different number of places, but I need to be able to do it easily. So I need to be able to go to a report and say, yeah, I want that figure, and I want that figure, and I want that figure, and that figure. So like if we're in Oracle eBusiness Suite, I want to reconcile payables to general ledger. Invoice register report, payment register report, two trial balances, extract one value from each one of them, A plus B minus C must equal D. If it doesn't, you've probably got an invalid account code combination, and you've got a whole load of transactions stuck. Okay, so those types of things. But the other thing is you must be able to model human activity. Close isn't a press of a button, it closes. There's a lot of work that gets done that can be automatically done, but there are always times where you need to go to a human being. It's typically around approvals of what's going on, and you have to be able to not just model it, but then manage the time with it. So if Tony Beeston gets asked to go and do this, and I go, yeah, I'll do it later, I need to be reminded that, hey, do you know everybody else is waiting for you? And if I still decide to ignore it, then my manager gets to know about the fact that I'm a lazy so-and-so. Okay. This isn't a detailed rendition. This is a marketing rendition of a financial close. Okay? We have a whole load of subledgers, and everything in accounting is designed with halt signs, sanity checks, the reconciliation checks that we do. And all of our finance systems are designed that we have to go and check something. We have to go and check something before we move on, go and do this. So the whole purpose of automation is to look at each one of those, define what the rules are, allow successful completion to go on, and if we're breaking them, what do we do to resolve? So, yeah, AP transactions, we might be able to sweep them to the next period, okay? So their results. There was over 80 steps of financial processing. That's not 80 jobs, that's 80 parts of finance that are occurring across all the different subledgers, so lots of things going on inside them. But they modeled all of them as to what was happening. They created one model that consistently ran for every operating unit. So now I get a consistent close. Because I've only got one thing that's running, it takes variability in about what's going on. There was certainly hundreds, if not thousands, of conditional checks that were built within it. And it had positive affirmation messages to start with. So when it passed a successful test, it sent a message to say, we've passed this and it worked. Yeah? They stopped sending those after a few months. This concept of business outcome is the most important bit of being able to check. This is what people are doing. This is where our reconciliations, our sanity checks, our daily checks, this is what burns all of our time to go and check that things are going on. And that may very well mean going to a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet is not the devil. Spreadsheets are very valuable and useful things. They can be overused, but they are a source of what's going on. Both building them as part of the automation policy and using them and consuming them. They actually got to the point of closing those 27 sets of books, their test sets of books that they were doing. They closed them out in 4 hours. They had 5 people sitting at desks watching. Okay, so much better. Good improvement that was going on. So they'd proved the fact it would work. Dominic actually works out that I actually worked with Dominic through this process. And one of the things that he was always surprised with about automation was it didn't really matter what problem the user came with. Yeah, I can do that. It's cool. I've got the reach. I can reach out to see it. Their second round, I said it's a journey. It's not a big bang approach. Yours is probably going to be reconciliations to start with. They extended it. They did all of the daily reconciliations. Not just subs to GLs, but feeders into subs, bank statements. Every single reconciliation that existed, they automated them and they delivered them back to the accounts team so they could self-serve them if they wished to. They actually took other processing that was manually intensive. Payment batches, for example, with its secondary review process for processing. Well, if you've passed all the rules, you're not paying too much and there's no payment above payment limit and it's all approved, you can go. You don't need to stop and wait. You might ask for an approval, but that's just somebody clicking a button. So they create this self-service concept. They actually closed those 300 sets of books. We've obviously rolled on a couple of years. They did all 132 to start with. They're at 300 sets of books. Being a service provider, they have a KPI, and they had a lot of missed KPIs around financial close issues. All of those have disappeared. So they've actually dropped their KPI failures by 80%. They've still got some in other parts of the system of what they're actually managing. But the productivity gains were huge. When we talk about how many people are involved, there's now 4 people on call when they close. Yeah. They are a government organization. They have a different set of rules. Could you ever have accounting just on call? I don't think so. But the other thing we went back and asked him now is Sarah said, okay, could you do this without automation? And he went, oh, that's a bit of an unfair question. Probably need 150 people even if it had worked. I mean, the answer is no, I can't do this. So that was just showing somebody's journey. And there's lots and lots of companies that have gone through this exact same journey. Typically, I get asked, oh, what impact can I have? And I tend to start with turn around and saying, we don't know what your problems are. Halving it is what we normally target for. That's what we're normally looking at. So if you're on an 8, we'd be looking at 4 or 5. Yeah? But the other thing is, if you're on a 12-day, you do need to ask why. If there's an external feed of data that comes in on day 11, plus 11, you can't estimate it. Well, closing in 12 days is really closing in 1 because you had to wait for that data. So you need to look at it. But this financial close, it is critical to the business. The CFO does want to fix it. Yeah? There is a reason for doing it. It can be costing a lot of money, and that cost is really hidden. Yeah? And the cost is all around adjustments as well as just the HR time of doing the work. It's adjusting everything, going back, rerunning everything, making a decision with the wrong figures, potentially, about what's going on, of what's happening. The proof is the fact that the close cycle time can be impacted dramatically without re-engineering. Your close works today. Yeah? If your close does not work today, then you should be looking at re-engineering, okay? Because the process is broken. Yeah? But it does. You close every month, quite happily. It just might take longer than you need to. And I would propose that automation is that key change agent. It's the one thing that changes the field, that allows us to go back and look at that. And I do a lot of work with IT heads. And I always turn around and say, this is your one opportunity to go back into the CFO and turn around and say, can I make your life better? So have that conversation. As I say, if they've got a quick close or they don't need to change, that's fine. It costs nothing to have a coffee with the CFO. But if he has the problem, he doesn't know you can fix it. All of a sudden you can be his greatest friend ever. So I don't think we really get to questions. I will be at the end of the hall if you've got any detail, because often around finance, it's, I have this very specific problem, okay? I'm very happy to talk about issues around that in different ways, but reach out to me. You can find me in the agenda. You can send questions to me in there as well.